Alright guys, so what we're going to be looking at today is we're going to be looking at making our own kind of headless portrait like they were doing in these Victorian era kind of creepy headless portraits. And this was before Photoshop, so they were doing this kind of very, very old school in the darkroom. So as you can see, this is very kind of common at some stage where people get their portrait taken and they would be headless for some reason. So we're going to make our own kind of one of these basically. But we're going to use Photoshop. We're not going to have to use a darkroom for this. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to be using Photoshop today. All right, so there's going to be a lot going on in Photoshop. So I'm going to take you through this pretty much step by step. So on how to get your two images that look like this and get it into looking something that looks like this. And then hopefully you can then go on and do your own kind of headless portrait of yourself that you'll take photos of. All right, but first we're going to start off with Shia here because he did some stuff in front of a green screen that was quite helpful. All right, so the first thing you're going to need to do is, I'm just going to close these, is you need to open up Photoshop. All right, yours will might look a little bit different to mine. I've got Photoshop 2015. You might have an earlier version, so it might look a bit different, but most of the main things are already there already. What you're going to do, once it's open, you're going to go File, you're going to go Scripts, and then you're going to go Load Files into Stack. All this does is it gets your selected files that you're going to choose and it's going to put them into different layers in the Photoshop file. Now, Photoshop works a lot on layers. It's basically how it works. You've got to think about layers and Photoshop in terms of, imagine there's a lot of kind of transparent layers on top of each other, and that's how you build up a picture, and that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to choose Load Files into Stack. And it's going to come up a little dialog box here. Use Files. You're going to click Browse here. All right, and then hopefully you've already downloaded the files you need, the Headless Shia photos. You need the one called Shire, and you need the one called Background. Those two there. Choose those. Choose Open. Choose OK. And then that has done it for us here. So you'll notice that we have our one picture here, but it's actually in two different files, two different layers, sorry. So we have our background layer and we have our Shire layer. And then we can actually turn these layers on and off just by clicking these little eye icons. So you can see that just like layers on top of each other, I can't see the Shire layer because the background layer is on top of it. So if I turn that off, then we can see it. Now we actually need Shire on the top layer. So all we're going to do is in our layers palette here, if you can't see that, you just need to go to Window and then Layers. All right. But what we need to do is we need to just drag it so Shire is on top of the background, just like that. And so it should look like that. All right, so we need to remove Shire's head from this. So the first thing we need to do is select around his head. All right, now I'm going to zoom in a bit. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can use the magnifying glass and zoom in. All right. Or you can use Control and Space, and that will do the same thing as well, and then click. All right. To move around the picture, you can hold down the space bar, and then you see it turns at a little hand, and then you can just drag that around like that. All right. Now, so we need to remove his head. So we need to go over here to what's called our selection tools. So our selection tools allow us to choose or select different parts of the picture. The tool we want today, the tool we're going to be using is called the Magnetic Lasso tool. All right, it's this one here. It might be hiding beneath the Lasso tool. We want the Magnetic Lasso tool. So I'm going to choose that. Basically what this does, it helps you out a little bit when you're making your selection in that it'll try to find an edge for you. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on an edge. All right, I can just click once and let go. And then I'm going to just kind of go around and go around the edge, clicking every now and then when I need to, but it'll find kind of the edge for you. All right, the hair's always a bit tricky. All right, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is pretty rough and ready, very quick kind of activity. So don't expect it to be like the best thing you've ever done. I'm going to go around his jawline here. All right, I'm going to get to the end and then click. And what we've got now is we've got our marching ants. And our marching ants means that we've made a selection around his head. If you've really stuffed up, you can add or take away from a selection. So then you can hold down here, go back to Lasso tool. If you want to add to selection, you hold down Shift, and that will add a plus. So then you can add bits back if you feel like you've missed a bit. All right. To take away from a selection, you hold down Alt, the Alt or Option key on a Mac, and then you can take away from selections. Don't worry too much about if your selection's good. Make sure it's just kind of pretty close around to your guy. All right, now we're going to zoom out a bit. All right, so I might click on our magnifying glass, choose zoom out a bit. All right, and then I'm going to select maybe our moving tool, which is this one. So next thing we want to do is move our head. Basically, I'm going to put the head down here, kind of in his hand a bit. All right, but the head needs to be on a new layer. So we need to remove his head from this layer and then add it to a new layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the layer palette here, or layer selection, layer menu. I'm going to go new layer via cut. So this is going to cut his head out of this layer and then add it to a new layer. All right, so I'm going to select that. So what we can see that's happened here is we now have a new layer. All right, and it's been cut out of this other layer. So if I was to turn off all the things here, if I just show you the first layer, that is just Shire's head. Okay, if I just show you that, that is where Shire's head used to be, and that's our background. So when we add them all together, we get our picture again. But using our move tool, we can now move his head away, just like that, and put it wherever we want. All right, I'm going to put it over here. Now, if you want to rotate your head or make it bigger or smaller, you are just going to press either Command T on a Mac or Control T on a PC, and that is the free transform tool. So again, I can move it around, I can rotate his head, all right, and then I can make it bigger or smaller as well if I want. I don't want to make it any bigger or smaller, but I do kind of want to rotate it so it's kind of maybe over here. All right, so once you have it exactly where you want it, basically you either press return or you click on this tick up here, and then that is in place. You can always move it again, that's not a problem. All right, now there's a couple of things that need to be fixed up here. We need to fix up this bit because it looks like we've just cut out a bit out of this picture, and we want to change it so we can see, so the fingers are on top of his head and not just kind of behind it. So we're going to work on that bit first. So what we're going to do is on this head layer here, we're just going to erase the bit of that layer where the fingers are. That way the fingers look like they are on top. All right. So what we're going to do is just on the head layer here, we're going to change the opacity down to about 50%. Just until we fix this up. So now we can see the fingers going through. All right, I might zoom in a bit to that so we can see what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the eraser tool, which is this one here. So you can click on that or just press E. And we're going to use that to erase those the head where the fingers are. Now this brush here at the moment is a little bit big, so I need to make that smaller. There's a few ways we can do that. I can click up here, this is the brush tool, and I can change the size. I can change the hardness, that's how soft it is on the edges, all right? Or what I can do is to change the size, I can simply use the square bracket tools on the keyboard to, oops, I'm just gonna undo that. If you ever want to undo anything, you can always use the history here. So you can go back to as far as you want, all right? Which comes in very handy. I use it constantly. So then I'm going to make it about the size of the fingers, and I'm just going to erase, whoops, undo that. Erase that part of the head. So it's going to look like he's grabbing onto that head. All right, so then after that, we're going to turn our opacity back up. I mean, it's not great, it's not perfect, but this is just a kind of quick and dirty intro to Photoshop. So there we go. We've got a kind of, he's grabbing onto his head there. We've got a bit of green in there, that's all right, because we're going to turn it into a sepia image anyway. Now we've just got to fix up this head bit, all right? The easiest way to do this is, again, using the eraser tool, all right? And then choose that layer. Make sure you've got the right layer fixed. So we're going to choose that. And we're just going to put the hardness of this brush all the way down to 0%. That way it's going to give us a nice, even edge. And then I'm just going to just click around here, our head, like this. So it just looks a nice and even coloring, all right, and gets rid of all those edges that we were worried about. So that's pretty good. I think we're ready to kind of finish this off now and make it a bit sepia. All right, so if you want to see all the layers now that made this possible, we've got our head layer there. All right, we've got kind of our body layer there, and then we've got our background layer there. So all together makes it look like this. All right, so now we've got all that right, what we're going to do, because we're going to make the whole thing the same color, we're going to make it sepia, we're going to flatten the image. So once we flatten an image, what that means is you're not going to be able to have all these layers to fiddle around with. So this is one of the last things you want to do. So once you're up to this stage, you're going to want to go to the layer menu here, and then you're going to go all the way down, and you're going to go to flatten image, which is this one down here. So once I click on that, that is going to make it just one layer there. So we can now make kind of our color correction. So to do our color correction, we're going to go to image, and we're going to go to adjustments. So here's all the adjustments that we can do on image. We can change the brightness, contrast, we can change the hue and saturation and things like that. All right, but what we want to do is we're going to make it black and white before, and then add a tint of color to it. So we're going to go to black and white here, and that's going to bring us up a bit of a menu, bit of a some selections still to make. So what you need to do is just play around with this to see what it does to the image to make it as nice and smooth as possible. What you might want to do is, I would say with the greens slider here, bring that up a bit, or play around with that to make your background kind of nice and smooth, so you don't want to have any edges. You might want to bring that up even more than that. Once you've got that right, you're going to click on tint, and this is going to tint your image. So this is going to change the color. The tint should already be set on some kind of sepia color. So this might be all you need to do. All right. If not, you might need to click on this and then choose what tint you want. You can change this as well if you want. If you want it to be more yellow, you could choose that. All right. And then press OK. And that's basically it. That'll be our finished image. All right. Once you've done that, then you just need to, we'll have a look. So we've got that there. That looks pretty good. That looks like Shires holding his own head. All right, so we're just going to go File, and we're going to Save As. All right, and then we're going to call it Shire Headless maybe, and then save it as a JPEG. That way it can be seen anywhere, and it's not going to take up too much space. And then click Save. Whenever this comes up, I always like to put it on large, as high as possible for quality. All right, don't touch any of this. Keep that on baseline, and then press OK. And then what you probably want to do is put that into your digital portfolio. Once you're here, then the next step is basically get your photo taken so you can do your own headless portrait. Think creatively be about this. You might want to try and put your head on a plate. You might put your own head on your lap. You might put your head on a stick, something like this. But the important part of it is you need to get 2 photos, and they need to be in exactly the same position. So make sure you're using a tripod and you don't move the camera. So you're going to want one that's got one that's you in it, and then one that's just of the background, so you can fill in that background a bit easier. So so one with you in it, and then basically one with you not in it, so you can get all that detail there in the background. This might be easier in front of a green screen, or you could try it in front of a more complicated background to see how you go with that. It's really up to you. All right, and that's it. That's the instructions. So have a go at that and see how creative you could get with your own portrait. All right, thanks guys.